Right, good evening everyone and welcome to the first meeting of the Waste Disposal Task and Finish groups. Can I just remind all those present to please wear a mask until seated, maintain social distance and when moving around the chamber and use a hand sanitizer provided. And can you please scan the QR NHS app poster with your mobile phone located at the entrance of the chamber and then switch your mobile phone to silent. We've also, the induction loop is now operative. Members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. Reporting officers using Teams, please switch cameras on and use the hands up icon to indicate questions and comments, and the chair will invite you to speak. The meeting of this sorry, bit of interruption over there. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public and the recording of the meeting will be available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. So that's the housekeeping over and done with. The first item on the agenda is election of chair. Could I have an election of chair, please?
Yeah, I nominate Councillor Amy Nichols.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Right, it's over to you, Chair.
That's fine. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Begum.
Do we have disclosures of interest?
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't think I've ever chaired a meeting here before, so bear with me. Do we have any urgent business?
Again, none, Chair.
Okay. And do we have any references from committees and other bodies?
At present, none, Chair.
Okay. So item 6 is outline, scope and the timeline discussion.
Right, thank you. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, members should have before you, Councillor Franks has kindly put before all members a proposal of reports for the forthcoming meetings. We also need to discuss frequency of meetings. The task and finish group is due to last for a period of 12 months. So if members want to agree first the actual frequency of meetings, and then if you want to go through the list of proposed reports that Councillor Franks put before you, and if anyone else has any other proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Does anyone have any proposals for schedule meetings? Councillor Franks.
It's a bit difficult, really, isn't it, to know how we're going to progress, and a lot depends on the speed with which the officers are able to put together the somewhat detailed reports that we're going to be looking for. I would suggest that we initially look for maybe one meeting a month, and perhaps one of the officers could offer some suggestions as to whether that's likely to work for us and whether they're going to be able to keep up with us.
Shall I respond, Chair? Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll just better introduce myself. Sue Frost. I'm the Service Director for Sustainable Development. And I've got Sean Askins here as well, who's the service manager, and Steve Lawson, who's one of the waste strategy officers. So we are, as you're aware, pulling together now a procurement process for a new waste contract. So we are already meeting as a board. We've got a board set up to deal with that. And monthly meetings are taking place. So what we could do is work out the dates of those and then report sort of either before or after those meetings, I think might be useful. Not specifically around what's discussed on the board, but it would be helpful probably to feed back to that board some of the results of what's coming out of this group.
Yeah, that's helpful, Sue. Thank you. It would be. I think it would. I mean, we really want to come up with something positive and something productive out of this exercise. It's an immensely useful piece of work if we get it right. But it needs to be. It needs to fit with the work that you're doing from the officer's end on putting together your proposals for. I presume you're building up towards a new tender document. And I guess you won't be doing it in the same way that we're doing it, but you're bound to be hitting some of the subjects that we're going to want to look at. So my guess is that we're going to be dependent on you to try and make that fit. And if it doesn't look as though it is fitting, then we need to have another conversation about it, don't we? I mean, is that a way forward?
If I could come in, Chair, Sean Askins. I suppose the main constraint will just be the generation and writing of reports and the cycle. If it's once a month, we could be sort of almost having a meeting, writing the report, submitting it, within a week. So I would say if it could be stretched to every 6 weeks, it would then give a time for the cycle. But if we get any site visits or members want to do any site visits, we can fit those in between and keep that information flow coming to you as a sort of small task and finish group, if that's something you'd be interested in. Rather than just formal reporting all the time, I can send you information as and when I get it.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether you're suggesting you want to report your board progress to us, or whether you want to report what we're saying to your board.
But both ways, but primarily some of the questions you've asked are a lot of data and a lot of sort of questions about different kinds of plastics. So quite happy to feed those back to you in sort of fairly substantial reports. But once a month, we probably struggle a bit with the resources we've got, but it's probably once every 6 weeks we can.
Yeah, my only fear is that once every 6 weeks doesn't maybe not give us enough meetings to be able to get through the work. I guess it depends on the flow of information, really, doesn't it? But over to you, Chair. If you think 6 weeks is okay, at least to start with, and suck it and see, as it were, and see if it works.
I think. Oh, Councillor Shaw wants to come in.
Yeah, most of what David's asked for, we should already have in our figures and everything else. We'll be able to tell you the different weights and that. But, I think there's a lot bigger job to be done now, because if we're going out for a re-tender for the waste transfer station and recycling down at the depot, then all the information you've asked for here needs to be in that contract, plus a little bit more. It'll be a contractual item, but I'd rather like to see what's going to the board come to this committee as well.
I agree.
Because if there's an opportunity for us to take on the operation of the waste transfer station, if it's viable, and none of us know whether it's viable or not now at the moment, because the people that have got it have got a big conglomerate behind them, and they can sell on the material, sell on the steel, sell on everything else at prices what are beneficial to them. But over the last few weeks, I've learned there's now a consortium of local authorities, what people can join, what can do the same kind of moving on, selling on and everything else. So what's happening at the board where we're putting the tender documents together, I would rather that came to this committee as well, so that you can look and say, well, you're only putting in the contract, 280 tonnes of plastics of a certain type. Should that go up, or can that come down and we put more in? But and you could look at the financial viability of us taking on the waste transfer station ourselves as well. Because if we can take that on, we can determine what is sorted, where it's going, what consortium we're part of, check where that consortium stuff goes to. Because as far as we know, it goes to SCC, and SCC tells us either it goes to Burning for Energy, or it goes to somewhere in Europe, but we don't know what's happened to it after that. If we were part of a consortium where we were controlling the waste, then we'd know everything about it. So I know it's a bit bigger job than you've asked here, but that information coming from the board I thought was ultra important over the waste transfer contract comes to you as well, so you can see how it's being put together. If it's not viable, we need to look at a different way of doing it. But if it is viable, why shouldn't we take it on ourselves and join in a different consortium to move all the sorted materials on with?
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Wynne?
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Yes, I agree with that. It feels to me at the moment that the discussion's going the wrong way. What's the time scale for actually having to go out to tender?
The tender has to be in place for the new contract needs to be in place for the 1st of April 2024. So if you work back from there, you would want to give whoever wins the tender at least 6 months to get everything sorted for the transfer, TUPE and all the other aspects of a large contract to come into play, plus the executive and governance requirements and the sign-offs, potentially OSB, which you'd want to come back probably another 6 months. So you would be looking at sort of having a firm decision or preferred bidders sort of April 2023. So then that gives a long lead-in time to go through the governance and various other processes. What I would also say is once you get past the initial stage, probably the first 6-8 months this year, you'll start, or the board will start looking at details, commercial details, contractual details, and that's where you have a sort of a crossing over really of it being open and the information you share and the contractual information you're discussing, so that when you go out to the market, you're not prejudicing anything or giving anybody unfair competition. So
supplement, please. In which case it sounds to me as if we should be going in the other direction. It sounds to me as if this group and the challenges which this group can put forward would go along better with what Councillor Shaw was talking about if we started off by having more frequent meetings and back off if it starts to get in the way. I think I'd rather do it that way round than the other.
So is the feeling I'm hearing that we want to have monthly meetings? Yes, okay. Is that okay with you, Sean?
We'll work around that, yeah.
Okay.
Get your reports to you.
Perfect. So in terms of scope, we've got David's document in front of us. It sounds like we want to add procurement and viability of bringing it in-house to this scope. Is there anything else anyone would like to raise?
Yes, if I may, sorry. But given what Councillor Shaw was saying, I don't think whether or not it needs to be brought in-house is something that we can conclude until we've gone further down the line and seen what some of the results are.
What I'm asking for now is that you look at it as a committee,
Mhm.
and you may come back in 6 months' time and say, we don't believe this would be viable to fetch it in-house because we haven't got the connections, you know, we ain't got the capabilities to sell the stuff on, that kind of stuff. If you do that, we know we're going out for tender with just private companies. If you come back to us in 6, 9 months' time and say there is an opportunity in here for this to be made viable, then I'd love that. But either way, someone is going to have to say yes or no to it being viable. I mean, one of the things we need to look at was just as in the capital programme, we've got to put in there for a sprinkler system down to the waste recycling depot. It's £1.2 million. But that a private company will get the benefits of that £1.2 million, not us. So we've got to spend that money anyway. But why should we? If it's viable for us to have it in-house, why aren't we taking it in-house? If it's not viable, someone tell me, and we know which direction we've got to go in then, and making the contract so tight about what happens with all the recycled materials, where it goes and everything else, we know which road we're going down.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And that still takes me back to saying, let's make sure that we try and get as much work done as this group can in the shortest possible time to start getting some sort of lead on what you've said. It is.
Okay, so we're able to add that to the scope? Yeah, okay. Is there any? Councillor Franks?
Sorry.
Yeah, I think I'm perfectly comfortable with everything that's being said and the way we're going, and agree if there is a possibility of taking it in-house. I'd always rather things were done in-house than put out to contractors. But there's a viability issue we need to sort out. I think the only other thing we need to do this evening is to get some idea of what kind of information we're going to be able to have at the next meeting.
Sean or Sue, you
Yeah.
able to?
If I could just answer that, we provide information on tonnages, materials, the split of materials, where they initially go, and subsequently for most of the points Councillor Franks had raised in his note. There was a couple of things we just need to clarify, but we can provide most of that information to get things rolling.
Sorry, Chair. Do you also want to add the regular board updates work programme?
Sorry, right.
Yeah, Sean and Sue mentioned they have regular monthly board meetings, and it's put forward that we have feedback from the board meetings.
Yeah.
So we can add that. Okay.
So the next meeting, we're going to have a lot of like background and data. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Okay. David Wynne.
One more item, please. Tom mentioned the fact that there are consortiums of other local authorities. I'd like this committee to be brought up to date as quickly as possible with what those other groups of councils are doing, so we know the background.
One right next door to us, Hertfordshire, all the district councils in Hertfordshire joined together for the consortium of selling their waste on through the Hertfordshire consortium. And I understand there's one in Buckinghamshire as well, Sean? Yeah, Buckinghamshire. So either side of us is consortium.
Yeah, happy with that, Tom. I just think that as a group, we ought to be brought up to date so we know what the hell they're up to.
I would be happy you to get whatever information you need off any officers to get this done.
We should be able to provide at least some outline information on them. a lot of the details obviously be commercially confidential, but at least how they work would be probably the most interesting thing initially.
If you could include that, that'd be great. Thank you. So.
We'll look at the council's calendar of meetings and I'll email members of suitable dates.
Absolutely.
And on for the
And
next
then
meeting
about
about a
one a
month's time.
month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So are we agreed about the scope and that we're going to have monthly meetings? Okay, perfect. So I think that concludes our business. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sean, Sue, everyone for coming. Thank you. Have a nice evening.